Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Look at this. All right. Such a joy to be here tonight. It's a real gift to have the opportunity to engage in a path of freedom, of liberation. That's where we're at in our text. There's a lot of struggle, a lot of afflictions going on right now, a lot of division, a lot of worry and fear. I think tonight's teaching, where we're at in the text, is one that can be quite beneficial. So let's go ahead and pop that up. Oops. There we go. Freedom. Seems that way to me too. Now I need my glasses. I don't know that I can do much about that. I don't know how to increase the Kindle size here. There ought to be a way.
Those three buttons at the top, next the last no
right of what you clicked.
there, that one. Maybe.
You guys are just teasing me now.
John,
No.
isn't it the one that's the A, the two letters? Yeah.
No, that's a font.
Oh, sorry. Wait a minute. It said bigger or
Drops of
smaller.
size. Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
If it worked. There you go.
Whoa, that was way too big.
Width. Page width.
Well, wait, font size is good.
Lower down, page width.
Oops. Boy,
Wow,
we're
you can
all learning
change the
together.
line spacing and everything. That's really cool.
Page width.
Oh, page width. Yeah, there you go.
That bigger?
It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is. I'm just moving it.
Oh, there you go. That's doing it.
There it goes.
All right, it's very exciting. I just learned something. But before we get to that, um, Lama Alan Wallace, he really likes to balance earth and sky. And so sky is, the very subtle aspects of the teachings of our realizations and towards enlightenment. And the text is getting to that area here. We're getting to what it is to be awakened and how that works and process and what's involved. And earth, this is where most of us are living. We're living in samsara, we're living in the human body, and these very tangible things that we're doing in our daily life. And how do we engage in the activities, the environments we're in this human form, in this human body. So this very earth, all the way to very subtle forms of awakening. So earth and sky. And I was looking at the teaching today and I thought this is where I would like to be. I think that practical is very important right now. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of others? How do we engage in the world we're living in a way that is productive and meaningful, that is actually providing antidotes to the real core root of suffering, which is delusion, which is the afflictions of anger, hatred, division, insecurity, fears, resentments that give rise to people doing things that are harmful, people being self-centered, the environments that we get to live in. And it's so easy to focus on the person or the people and forget that that's a symptom. The real problem is the afflictions, the grasping, the greed, the suffering, the insecurity, and the delusion that power or this or that is going to somehow make us happy. And then all too often, responding to that, we as humans wind up being fearful, insecure, blaming, looking at the division, and there's us and them, and the real enemy arises, us and them, instead of the understanding of we and ours, the understanding of others trapped in samsara, just like I am, suffering from afflictions, just like I am, and having a perception of the world based on their conditioning, as I have a perception of the world based on my conditioning. I have a perception of the world based on the way I was raised, what's been taught to me, the environments that I've engaged in, and the people who've helped me learn how to live. And everyone we meet, everyone we come in contact with is the same in that way. They're trying to be okay, try to have their needs met, trying to find happiness, and they're impacted by the way they're raised and the experiences they've had, the traumas they've faced, and the joys they've experienced. And so understanding this is, the common disease is samsara. And some of us might be less afflicted than others. And it doesn't make me better than anyone. It just makes me less ill at the moment, subject to getting more ill in any given moment, based on how I attend to my life and others and this environment that we live in. So it's in this context I'd like to just move into the teaching of the text, which is understanding what freedom is, what liberation is. And in order to even begin that process, I need to understand that the prison I have is in my mind. That's the prison. It's not these events that I point my finger at. It's how I'm relating to those events. It's how I think they should be, or how I'm attached, how they affect me one way or another, and how my misunderstanding is giving rise to the grasping of me being separate from, independent, and understanding that freedom is about fathoming and unlocking the mind, its potential, and clearing away the obscurations and seeing more clearly, more freely, and understanding that thoughts and emotions are temporary. What's really important? How do I use this life? I was at a couple different meetings, one last night, one this morning. You guys are realizing we may never get to the text, right? I think we might. But the shares, the words were along the lines of, I have all this compassion and I have this hope and there's this problem and there's no solution. It was very clear to me last night that, this one situation, this one person, this one relationship, apparently, there's no solution. And that was the struggle. And then today it came up in a meeting, no solution. And wow, what pain, right? When we want to improve something or someone or the events or some environment and we don't have a solution. But there's always a solution. It just may not be the solution I want. Therein lies the problem. There's always a solution, but there may be many times in my life there's not the solution I want or I think is best, the outcome I would like. And therein lies, I think, the whole dynamic of suffering and freedom? Do I recognize there's always a solution and now there's freedom? Or do I get stuck in how I think things should be and see no solutions, no way to get there, and now I'm suffering? Now I'm in prison. And the start of this chapter is about freedom, freedom from a prison. And when I know that there's always a solution, there's always a key, there's always an opening, there's always something to do. When I'm imprisoned by an outcome that I think is required, because apparently I know how things should be, now I'm suffering quite a bit. So understanding this distinction of the opportunity to always improve, to always improve the world, to always improve any situation. It's not that I improve it in the way I think I want it to be, but rather, what are the qualities I can bring to any of it? What are the ways I can grow? What is the kindness or compassion I can bring into a moment for myself or others? That's always available, even in the most difficult of situations. And so the spectrum from my human afflictions and my human grasping and my human habits and tendencies and attachments. You're going to see attachment is that clingy little part about the solution. But if I'm not attached to an outcome, now I have solutions. So I can work with these things in a gradual way that allows me a little more freedom. And eventually, all the way to ultimate freedom, earth to sky. But in order to do that, I need to know that the real prison's in my way of grasping to my perceptions and the environment and what is being presented to me and thinking, wow, I know how things should go. And I totally miss a perspective of history, of governments coming and going, countries coming and going, uh, environments changing. I watched a little Bodhisattva breakfast corner from Shavasti Abbey this morning. And she was the nun, young nun, very fiery. I like her. She's really got a good energy. She was commenting on a book was written about these Chinese hermits that lived in the mountains in China and lived there for decades, and they're hidden yogis. And during the Chairman Mao's reign, and they sought to wipe out religion. People are unaware that Buddhism continued. They're unaware that there was a whole lineage of yogis in the mountains in China, and that it survived, that people continued to do things. And this guy went up and he wrote this great book. I've watched a documentary on it. It's quite remarkable about these yogis who live in caves and little huts and other, mostly lots of little huts way up in the mountains, remote, isolated. And he's interviewing, these hermits, and there's this one monk that he was interviewing, and he's kind of curious about how Mao's affected the whole journey about Buddhism and religion. And the monk was, "Who is this Mao you're talking about? Who is this Mao?" He'd been there since the early 30s. He'd been up there 50 years and virtually untouched by anyone named Mao. His life had not changed. He was untouched and was totally unaware. that, you know, all that was going on. And Mao has come and gone. And by the way, it's okay to be Buddhist in China now, actually. Have temples and stuff. They do have some pretty weird regulations, especially as they try to contain the Tibetans. You have to you have to get state permission to reincarnate, you know, if you want. So you know, there's some things, you know, that blue tape, red tape to get through, yeah. But nonetheless, there are now thriving Buddhist communities in China again. Once, you know, it was outlawed, lineages have maintained. In other words, there's a perspective to maintain about the ebb and flow of things. And, you know, Tibet's not its own country anymore. You know, maybe the United States won't be its own country, who knows? But because Tibet's no longer its own country, Dalai Lama made it out. All these other things have happened in the world, and it's part of the reason we're here now, talking about compassion. So I don't think I really know how things should work out. But I do know that everything that's happening is always an opportunity to cultivate merited wisdom, to undo the prison, to cultivate more freedom, and to be a benefit to others. That's without a doubt. And we have this opportunity, we have this rare and precious human birth favorable to Dharma practice. We have the directions. And I think that's quite amazing. So let's take a look at the directions. Now that we have all the page size, font stuff all done. Awesome. Freedom from cyclic existence, or cyclic, tomato, tomato. The 16 attributes of the four truths spoken in chapter 1 tell us that true cessation, as exemplified by Nirvana, has four aspects. So again, the four truths, and one of those truths is true cessation. The third one is what we call Nirvana, and it has four aspects. One, it is the cessation of the continuum of afflictions, their seeds, and the karma that causes rebirth. Two, it is true peace, the state of total tranquility that is completely free of all afflictive obscurations. Three, it is magnificent because we have reached ultimate satisfaction. Four, it is freedom because we have definitely emerged from cyclic existence. So these are these four qualities, and I want to start at this first one that says we are there's cessation of the continuum of afflictions, their seeds, and the karma that causes rebirth. So afflictions, the seeds of the afflictions, and the karma that causes rebirth. So sky, we can be totally free of all this. We can no longer have conditioned existence. We can be total peace. We can be liberated. We don't have to be caught up in a cycle of rebirth. We don't have to be caught up in dukkha, samsara, suffering. Totally free. Sky. Well, can we be free of some obscurations now and afflictions? can we free ourselves from some of the causes, the seeds that give rise to rebirth, in the sense of, in this lifetime, we're reborn every day. And sometimes I've repeated the same kind of thoughts and habits and energy that I keep giving life to. And right here in this lifetime, can I start working on the causes of some of my mental and emotional afflictions that I constantly give birth to? And I think, yeah, I think we probably already have, right? That we can, in this lifetime, and those of you who've been coming for a while have probably noticed, you don't have some of the old afflictions you used to. You have a little more freedom in the way you engage in your life with others. You have a little more choice about how you respond. You have a little more opportunity to not hang on to an attachment in a way that's creating a lot of suffering. We have lessened that. And if we get to the point there, it's talking about the seeds. It's talking about what gives rise to the afflictions, what gives rebirth to it again and again and again. And in this lifetime, right here, right now, these qualities of cessation, yes, we could be totally free, but there's probably a gradient where I'm a little more free than I used to be. But I am not completely free of my afflictions, my grasping, my attachments, my judgments. But maybe I have planted some different seeds. Maybe I've eliminated some of the afflictions. Maybe I have grown some wisdom and have created karmic imprints or causes for a greater sense of well-being, resiliency, flexibility, understanding, and emotional balance. And I think that's the big work we get to do right here, right now, is stop watering and nurturing the seeds of division, anger, hatred, separateness. Because that's going to lead to a lot of affliction, a lot more prison. And instead start watering the seeds of understanding, of wisdom, of compassion, understanding that all of us are suffering from the same illness called samsara, misunderstanding, dukkha. And I have an opportunity to be more free than I used to be and quit giving rebirth to the John that has those angers, resentments, jealousies, insecurities, anger. So really important to think about this opportunity of being more and more free, and the skills, the tools, the guidance that gives rise to that freedom. The second quality here, oops. The second quality here is true peace, a state of total tranquility that's completely free from all afflictive obscurations. I'm sure all of us have had some time of true peace. May not have been long, but some tranquility, not feeling afflicted in a moment. And we can create the conditions to have that more readily available. Experience it a little bit more often. And then as we get to 3 and 4, we're going to get into the sky. It's magnificent because we have reached ultimate satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of the burrito I had at Panchitos in Buena Vista, which, by the way, was pretty good. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just savoring that moment of tranquility and satisfaction for a moment. And but a state of not needing something, right? We uh, can have times of satisfaction and peace. And then the fourth one would be having emerged from cyclic existence. So that's definitely sky. But I want to, really emphasize that this is a process, an unfolding, and it's a gradual one. And it's really important to notice the unfolding in your life and the freedom that you now have that you didn't have before. But it requires a continual process. We don't, it's so easy to slip and let those seeds of anger, division, frustration come back. What we water grows, but without nourishment, they wither. So the situations that we find ourselves in our current environment, it's really going to be an opportunity to really grow bodhicitta, great compassion, wisdom, understanding, resiliency. Real opportunity for us. So I do hope we recognize that as best we can and engage in a path of freedom instead of imprisonment for ourselves and others. And the directions, pretty straightforward. Yeah, I do just now see that Ashley has her hand up. So, Ashley.
Yeah, I've been just in terms of what you were just saying and what you were saying at the beginning. This week, I've been thinking a lot about how I don't want to live in anger. I don't want to be in a constant state of sadness and agitation. I want to let go of that. But then there's part of me that says, well, that's giving up. That's giving in. That's allowing the dark side to win, so to speak. How do you balance that? How do you hold on to that what's right and doing the right thing and standing up for what's right, but at the same time not being angry, not allowing that to be the motivation. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well, but
Yeah, well, the dark side wins when we allow the anger, the hatred, and the darkness. I mean, that's the real enemy. Not the people, not the events, not the activities. And so it's actually not giving up. It's actually, and when I engage in the anger and the affliction, that's giving up. That's the surrender. The fierce bodhicitta rises up, gets up, shows up. I think of Mother Teresa, she's surrounded by poverty, disease, just the worst of things. And she just didn't worry about numbers, just helped the one in front of her. And the way that we combat anger, resentment, maliciousness, brutality is by being fierce warriors to cut through the delusion that gives rise to that anger and ill will and hatred. And instead, show up fiercely with compassion and understanding. And that's how one would fight back. There's a very wrathful manifestation of the Buddha of compassion, Mahakala. There's a very wrathful manifestation, the Buddha of wisdom, Yamataka. And these wrathful forms show up to really combat, that kind of sneaky, uh, malicious, pernicious seeds of ill will, anger, hatred, and delusion. And so we're able to actually fight back with loving kindness and compassion, with good boundaries, with uh, the way that we show up for people. But the way to have a hope for even turning a tide is always in connection and understanding. It's not in me and them. We did a whole thing on this. Yeah, was it last week around like Nelson Mandela and how he engaged his guards as human beings and got to know them. They became his friends and he would become the president, you know, and they were in the front row. And I think that's the message. That's the message of Martin Luther King Jr., of Gandhi, of Mother Teresa. I mean, the whole long list is always about the the actual method, the real tools, the weapons we get to use are wisdom, loving kindness, and compassion. And Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo talks about being that light, and that light dissipates darkness, but I don't want the darkness to overwhelm the light that we have to offer. And so it's the opposite of giving up. It's showing up, and it's doing the harder work of not letting the anger and hatred be the primary motivator. And also to understand that we will experience some anger and some hatred. And we don't want to stuff that, that's showing up. Those are the emotions that are arising. We just don't need to fuel them. And instead, choose to act out of loving kindness and compassion. And then we have a lot more uh, choice, a lot more at our disposal. And we remember who's really suffering then, me or them. That make a little sense to you, Ashley?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Greta.
Hey, thanks. This exchange you were just sharing with Ashley made me think about, because I was like thinking about the shift that came in me. Like conceptually, I could understand like it was pointless to fight against something I'm powerless over, and that fire with fire doesn't really produce meaningful results. And I guess I just wanted to say, like, one of the main drivers that I try to hold on to is like getting in touch with that, like, pain of feeling that way, like the pain of feeling that anger, the pain of feeling that hatred and division and separation is like, at a certain point, I think it becomes worse than um surrendering, and like it becomes the pain of hating someone or hating something and being angry and hurt by it. I'm like so brain dead right now. Is greater than the pain or the drive to make a point, to like fight that battle or something. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm like a little brain dead, but I just wanted to say that.
Thanks for sharing. Not sure I quite get it, but yeah.
Like the pain of the anger, like the pain of the like holding on to it shouldn't be this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like people shouldn't be allowed to do that. I'm not going to let that happen. There's like something very painful about that at a certain point, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Right, that part I get. I guess I didn't understand the part about
I lost my whole thought there in the last 5 seconds, so I get it. All right.
okay. Yeah. But that is, that's the deal is when we understand where the pain is, it's really in my mind. It's really in the resistance. It's really in the non-acceptance. It's really in the idea that it should be different than it is, right? There's the pain, uh, which is different than, whew, I really do not like how this is turning out. And I can see that there's going to be a lot of suffering. And I have empathy and I recognize that. And then empathy can turn to hopelessness and despair, or empathy can trigger compassion. And now compassion is solution oriented. How do we show up for those difficult situations? How do we combat ill will? And the opposite of ill will is compassion. And compassion takes many forms. Often uh, it's fierce, but it's never judgmental. It's never, I'm better than someone. It's showing up to reduce suffering in the best way they know how. And that option's available. So with the empathy, with the feelings, having the shift from hopelessness and despair to compassion, you're always going to see a deep relationship around me thinking things should be different than they are, and now I'm in the prison. Here now, Center.
Hi, this is Paul, and this is my first time, so I'm a little nervous weighing in.
Okay. We'll be
I
gentle.
feel, okay, great, thanks. So a couple of things first that it just is in way of a preamble. I have my own, personal issues, and I deal with those, and I feel like I'm kind of a little kid in this. And secondly, I've got loads of problems, but that's not to the point. My getting angry about the present situation, I'm dealing with. It's something I do. I tend to get righteous. This isn't really what's concerning me tonight in listening to this conversation. Over the past week, because I was, in a higher ed situation for 30 some odd years, and have a lot of people that I talk to online and so on. It's more the idea that I understand, and I have no problem with saying this, that I perfectly understand the privilege that I have because of who I am. And so I can get angry and yell and scream and really stand little chance of any kind of retribution. But what I've been grappling with in the past week, and it's been about 3 or 4 years since I really started to get this concept of becoming an ally to people who don't have the privilege that I do. And that doesn't mean, it doesn't always mean standing up. It doesn't mean telling them what to do. A lot of times it just means to listen. But what I'm concerned about is being present as an ally with people who are not me. I have relatively, I mean, it could affect me, but people who are currently terrified. And it seems like it would be a difficult thing for me to say, oh, well, okay, I'm not making light of this by any means, but to say you really ought to go to Dharma talk and they'll tell you how to calm down. And I know that's not what you're saying, but uh, they're scared out of their minds, and with good reason. It's the first time in my life, and I'm 70 years old, that I've been, these groups of people are in trouble. We've been working to get groups of people to a certain point for 50, 60, 100 years. It all could be gone. And there's that issue of retribution. And, I'm just throwing that out there as somebody who is still very much in the learning stages of how to be an ally. And I think this is a great forum where I might come away with something that could help me.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
And well said. And being an ally, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. But not just an ally to the people I like, to all humans, to all animals, to all beings. And an ally is there to support, to help the highest potentials come to fruition, and to reduce suffering in any ways possible. And as you pointed out, that's not to tell other people how to live or any of those things, or that I have great ideas about that. It's empowering people, right, to engage in life in ways that are productive and meaningful for them, and supporting them in times of duress, fear, brutality, oppression. And in order to do that, we need to recognize the causes of those things. And the causes of those things are underlying misunderstandings. And that's what we talked about with samsara. The causes of samsara, what we live in, we call samsara. It's conditioned existence, and it's every human being that we come in contact with has a misunderstanding about themselves and the nature of what gives rise to well-being, and a misunderstanding about their experience. And they act in their own self-interest, and this has been the case throughout history. And people have been oppressed, genocides have happened, wars have happened, civilizations have come and gone. Why do I think that I can fix that? Right. If I think I'm going to fix samsara, I'm already suffering in ways that are untold and delusional. What I can do is engage in this existence in ways that reduce suffering, cultivate well-being, and work at the root underlying causes that give rise to the maliciousness, the ill will, the anger, and the hatred. And in truth, people are going, people suffer every day. We suffer, and yes, we have privilege, and others don't, and me being angry and hateful is not going to help them, nor will it change the situation. But coming from compassion can potentially really help people, and can also combat the core causes that give rise to the division. And so this is where we, understand, and if we want to make change in the world, we need to be an active cause for that change. And as John Francis points out, we're the environment. How we treat each other is the environment. If I'm going to treat you as less than, not as valuable as me, uh, that's not going to work very well. Can I treat you as just as valuable as me, but you're doing some pretty harmful things, so I'm going to do my best to put a stop to it? That's helpful. But when I also understand that person, it's if we go back to All Quiet on the Western Front, great, core scene there, All Quiet on the Western Front. German soldier, and I think it was an English soldier, could be American, wind up in this foxhole together, and they fight, and he stabs the German guy, and the German guy has this slow death next to him. And as that whole long night goes on, he winds up in discovering that that this person had I'm not sure it was a fiance or a wife and kids, just like him, that had hopes and stuff just like him. And at the end of the day, what he realized is they're wearing different uniforms because they're born in different countries. But they were just like each other. They just happen to be born in different countries, wearing a different uniform. And They're killing each other. And so when we can understand this as humans, that we are killing each other with anger, hatred, division, fighting back, uh, ill will with ill will, well, that just continues the cycle of suffering. But when I can be an ally to all human beings and in any situation, focus on what would be a method to improve a situation, to help people with an understanding that I am limited in my capacity to change the vast conditioning of samsara. I am capable of improving some of the lives that are in front of me today. But it always starts with me. And how am I going to bring any peace to the world when I have no peace? How am I going to bring any compassion to the world when I don't have it? How am I going to be an ally to anyone, when I can't even bring some compassion uh, to someone just like me who has a different view? So the way we change the world is that way. The way we impact environments is that way. And every great movement in this worldly earth environment of humanity
No, Pugsley, get down.
starts with Pugsley getting down.
Sorry.
No problem. And and understand Pugsley is just like me. He's just trying to be happy too. So all of these great people that we've acknowledged over history and time, have the same message and started these movements. But there are millions more whose names we don't know, who have done the same thing time and again, shown up with loving kindness, compassion, understanding, and broke down walls and didn't let labels like somebody's political affiliation or religion or culture define an individual, and recognize those are just labels on top of a human being. And those labels are replaceable, changeable, and don't have any way to actually identify the ultimate nature of any human being. So that's the work we get to do. Alyssa has her hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry for the darkness.
Yeah, you're
Um,
supposed to be bringing the light. What happened?
I know. Well, outside because drumming is happening inside. So kind of loud in there. Um, what does activism look like in like people are talking about this as an opportunity as a call for action
Mhm.
and thinking about uh, joining some kind of organization that might um, do something, right?
Mhm. Yeah, we all
That's
need it.
how does that so often when I think about organizations, activist organizations, um, a whole lot of anger shows up there.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't really want to be part of that. So what would that look like? And are there organizations, I guess maybe that's what I'm asking. Do you know of organizations that act more compassionately in their motivation?
There are um, activists who have less anger, but you're going to find we're human, so people get pissed off, with the best of intentions and the most noble causes, and then we can also get self-righteous. So I think even in the most spiritual religions, you're going to find, some pretty angry and self-afflicted people, and that human nature is going to be there, which we need to be activists, right? We need to be activists for change. And I was, just as you're talking, I have a dear friend who's vegan, and really animal rights, the whole thing about uh, not harming animals. And she actually, she did have her own little protest and the be at where they delivered like the livestock and the animals to come and she would visit with the drivers. She'd stop them and she'd talk to the drivers and she'd just have conversations without judgment, and kind of bring some awareness that you're bringing all these little lives to be killed. How do you feel about that? And but she wasn't hateful and she wasn't mean to them, and she'd show up in the early mornings when the deliveries come. And it was meaningful for her to have those conversations. And she belongs to organizations, and she was mentioning how at one of the events they're having, animal rights and that this person stopped by, saw the signs, wanted, didn't want cruelty to animals, and shows up and wants to learn more, but she's wearing leather shoes. And one of the people there gives her this huge lecture about wearing leather shoes, which did not make her feel very welcome to, the open possibilities. And therein lies what you're talking about, I think, is, how do we meet people where they're at? And how do we be an example of our message without the judgment and the self-righteousness and the anger of our cause? And I think that there's many causes and many good organizations that have things that we feel are in alignment with however one feels. And we can also be an example in that organization of someone like her who would have a talk with that person about how to make someone feel more welcome and allow them to embrace something without such a thing. That same thing happens at Buddhist temples. You try to go put a Buddhist text on the floor in a Tibetan temple, you might get a lecture. And because we don't put Buddhist texts on floors, we take them nicely. And you might be a little more kind and go, hey, probably new here. Let me help you with your book. And they show you how we do that. And likewise, when we talk to others, how can we speak in a way that we can be heard? Nobody's going to hear me when I'm judging them. They might be able to hear me when I speak to them as though they have value and that their view to them makes as much sense as my view to me does. And then I might actually be able to speak in a way that I could be heard. And they might be able to speak in a way that I can hear them. Anger, hatred, and judgment cuts off communication. And so, yeah, there are, as a matter of fact, Lama Alan Wallace, one of his big movements is these six balances, this whole educational project about how to have people in schools, kids, universities, engage in these emotional, mental balance, and so forth, that really affects how we treat each other and ourselves and the world. And they're activists. They've got a whole program. They're trying to change the world, fathom the mind, and heal the world. And that's their movement. And then we also have people like Cesar Chavez, right? And, I think of Mother Jones back in the early Union days in the coal mines and all that, who fiercely stand up, put their lives on the line, but not to do it with hatred. I had the opportunity to stand and, as I've mentioned many times, and protest with my little sign, with my teacher, Geshe Gelsen, or monks, or signs, protesting the brutality China inflicts on Tibetans, but not in anger, just highlighting that they should stop. Yeah. It's hard to be that awkward guy with the make peace, not war, while you're yelling at someone in anger. It doesn't hold up very well.
Thanks.
Because it's also important to understand this is one moment of centuries. And uh, we need some perspective. And what are we doing in this moment that's going to make a better future instead of feeling the catastrophe of the moment? Maybe we'll sneak into the text. Let's see.
John, I
Yeah.
was I was thinking about a story you told about, I'm going to get it wrong, but there was a teacher and there was a student, and the student was acting out of pride, and the teacher struck him physically. And I that story stayed with me because it was unsettling. And the more I understand this stuff, the more I understand that the teacher didn't have anger in his system. He was just doing a service to the. Do you remember the story I'm talking about?
Yeah, it took me a minute. And yeah, it wasn't like a school teacher, everybody, just so you know.
Yeah.
No, no, it's, uh, I mean, that's a big story about our spiritual pride and how that can get in our way of understanding. And this American teacher with a big following and all the cool yogi garbs and all the Buddhist teacher adornment, went to visit, just one of the great lamas. And lama's just a simple guy who lives in meditation and yogi. And this guy brought all his students and, you know, went up and told him all his realizations, all the stuff he's accomplished, all that stuff to this, Tibetan yogi, seemingly, yeah, to impress him or to do that. Um, and the yogi just looked down and slapped his face. That's all. He just slapped his face, not hurt him, not, slapped his face, which was pretty embarrassing, right? When you have all your students and you got this group and all that. And he just said, seems like there's still some ego there. That's all. So it's just illustrating a point that story was. And so yeah, he didn't slap him because he was angry or hatred or hit him hard or any of that. He just skillfully demonstrated that there is some realization yet to be aware if you still have all that ego and can feel embarrassed like that. So we can use our spiritual practice to dress up our ego, or we can use it to eliminate it. And sometimes it takes the wrong direction. That's all that story is about. But we have opportunities to be really clear about highlighting the damage that people do and the pain it causes, and that's skillful compassion. And that's really was Gandhi's technique. By the way, my background's a history teacher, so I have all these examples. But what he showed was what his skillfulness was to highlight to the world the brutality and make it known so people could see the light of the brutality. And then they were moved to change it. That's what he did. And so that was skillful means. But I think our minds get really tricky. Our minds get to think, yeah, I'm in the United States. United States is a privileged country. And Paul, you're talking about being in a privileged state where, yeah, the moment we have that, we may not have it long at all. There's nothing to say that the United States wouldn't become just a memory of a place that was once a democracy, uh, and so let's not be delusional about that. Uh, Countries come and go, governments come and go, democracies come and go, authoritarianism rises, uh, genocides happen. This is the story of the world we've lived in. It's just the nature of it. So to sit here and think, wow, I'm at the moment have some privilege, uh, but I wouldn't hang on to that. The real privilege is the inner capacity that we can have, understanding of true causes of well-being and of compassion and liberation mentally and emotionally. But in truth, the world as we grab onto it and think it would be just this way or that way. We just had a pandemic. We have lots of appointments going on, which don't look good for the world that we're about to continue to engage in. But other people have lived through that. Dalai Lama lost his own country. A million Tibetans are slaughtered. And, to sit there and think that all these things happen to others but won't happen to me. I don't know how realistic that thought is. But what won't ever happen to me if I engage in the path of understanding is that my mind gets imprisoned, and I understand life's messy, that this is samsara. And every moment of my life, I have an opportunity to improve myself and the world we live in, and to do my part with whatever's unfolding, and to be bringing some light every single day that I'm breathing. That's possible. And there's a solution. But if I'm hanging on to the idea that I'm going to have an outcome that I want, that's prison. So hopefully that's a hopeful note. Yeah, but we need to get real. The delusion is that, we're all in our little comfy little abodes, man. And there's a lot of suffering that comes with that. But when I can recognize that in this moment I'm in those nice positions, and how do I use them while I have them? Well, that's meaningful.
Precious life. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, Kurt, sorry. You're muted, Kurt.
God, I can't seem to get my buttons figured out tonight. Sorry about the dog comment earlier. He was jumping on the couch. He knows he's not supposed to do that. The at the end of one of these sections, at the end of one of the sections, I think it's the end of the Samsara section in Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature, which is the book we're in, I believe. The Dalai Lama says at the very last sentence in the Samsara section is cyclic existence is truly terrifying! Exclamation point. And that's it. That's how he ends it. And I'm getting, yeah, that's the sense I'm getting from this conversation tonight is, these illusions that I have, that the illusions of safety that I have, right, are based on, they follow the same lines as my illusions of happiness, where happiness comes from, right? Is a diluted, I'm kind of deluded about a lot of things. That's what I'm picking up tonight, is that my delusions run deeper than I thought they did, right? And I'm you feel barely equipped to handle that fact, right? I mean, there's the fact that we're playing the long game here. I got to keep coming back to the fact that we're playing the long game. I have to, for me, rebirth, is a tremendously comforting concept when I get faced with things like this, right? That we're looking at. And I'm not exactly sure how it all works in my head yet, but but I can keep coming back to that if I can factor that in there, right? The fact that this is an ongoing journey that I'm on to perfect this, right? To get and then that brings my real question when reading those first four things, right? The nature of nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
What is the you're going to get so tired of me asking this question. I don't know why I can't get it in my head. What is the motivating once you get there? Why would you do anything? Right? Why not just sit there? What is the motivating force to keep coming back to help others if you don't have any of that if there's no if you're living in complete satisfaction, with no concerns about it, what is it that motivates you? And I realize it's a moot point. I'm not there, but I keep wondering that. And now you can tell me the same thing you always tell me, but I need to hear it again, I guess.
Well, I mean, just the short answer is bodhicitta. So great compassion is the core. It spontaneously arises with enlightenment and with great compassion. Of course, there's nothing else to do but help, but you don't suffer. And you can have compassion without suffering, that bodhicitta. But beyond that is, at that point of full Buddhahood, it's beyond concept. And so it's kind of silly to try to describe something that's beyond concept. But the core, great bodhicitta, great compassion. I mean, that spontaneously is our very nature as we recognize that ultimate uh, ultimate nature of self. Bodhicitta spontaneously rises, and so that I would suggest is probably the motivator.
I guess I didn't need to answer. I just was checking. That's exactly the answer that I came up with in my own head, but I just wanted to make sure. Just checking to see if
Okay.
that's what it was. But I can see that I'm starting to be able to sort of see that.
Yeah. So I guess where I wanted to, I want to get to a point where I think if we understand that this is samsara, then everything we do, we get to understand makes a difference. That I'm not going to fix samsara. Samsara is, just filled with delusion, anger, resentment, jealousy, gives rise to all the afflictions. People have afflictions. There's genocide. Like this is samsara. I'm not going to get in the delusion I'm going to fix samsara. There's a lot of suffering in that. But when I understand the very nature of existence and that those causes of suffering, the way that goes on, then I get to work with samsara and see incredible compassion, kindness, resiliency, the mass of humanity, and how people help each other and how people in their deepest affliction still care about each other. And that capacity of good that's in everyone, that Buddha nature is available in everyone, including that person I might be hating in a particular moment. And I'm going to tell you, there's probably a lot of people that hated me. Pretty sure I have an ex-wife still does. uh, and uh, and I've changed, and others can change. but we don't bring about the change with hatred by more samsara. In other words, these causes of samsara, I can either add to or alleviate. And it's not like this is a perfect place and there's these little things that come up and these events that happen that screw it up. That's the inverted view of reality. Reality is the very nature of people's existence is one of gives rise to insecurity and comparisons and judgments and resentments and afflictions and and all that. And a grasping delusion that if this happens, I'll be happy, and if that happens, things will be okay, and I'm going to somehow make things in a particular way that's going to provide me and mine with the happiness I seek, and we'll all live in a world that I think should exist. Not very effective. But if I understand, which is what the Buddha does, all of this is unnecessary. And all of this arises out of confusion, and all of this arises from that baseline 3 core root poisons. Well, let's go with addressing those poisons of that misunderstanding that gives rise to attachment and aversion. And instead, live in reality with loving kindness and compassion, the opposites. And now I'm actually bringing light to the darkness. I'm digging out the root causes of gives rise to suffering. I'm creating a difference in the world and helping people see their innate goodness and allowing the conditions for that to ripen. But that condition does not ripen when I'm hating them. I'm addressing their behaviors while recognizing that underneath those behaviors is innate goodness that's covered up with their own afflictions. And then I have a lot more capacity to make a difference, to heal, to be well. And a lot of us can find a lot more freedom and change the trajectory of how we engage with each other. And I'm going to just tell you personally, I've had lots of conversations with people of pretty malicious, pretty hard beings and very different political views that had really meaningful discussions and real care for each other. And I think those have been really, really wonderful. And there are lots of role models for that, including, as many of you know, and I refer to frequently, the black guy who makes friends with the KKK and has them over for barbecues and gets to know them. And you get the grand wizard stop being a grand wizard. He's just saying, hey, you hate me, why don't you get to know me? And some of them stay KK members, but they're still his friends. And that's, to me, is the kind of bodhisattva. We don't change people by hating them. We change people by recognizing their afflictions and seeing how we can be an ally to alleviate some of those afflictions. But it needs to start with me. So the directions in the path are a little teaser for next week, because then we'll get to it, is the path of awakening is ethics, concentration, and wisdom. That's the answer. And in order to have that manifest in my life, I need to cultivate wholesome activities of body, speech, and mind. I need to bring them into the world daily, and I need to bear in mind my interdependence with all things. And the way that I perceive the world is always a subjective view from my perspective. And that's not the way that it actually exists. And so what is it here to teach me, and how can I be helpful? And that's the bigger solution, is that question. In this situation, how can I be helpful? what would do the greatest good in this moment. And be activists, bodhisattva activists. We change the world by changing how we interact with people. We change the world by what we bring to it. And the moment you put a little more love in the world, there's more love in the world. A little more hatred in the world, there's more hatred in the world. So every time you bring some patience, loving kindness, and compassion, there's more of that in the world. So let's be activists. Let's really work with our immune system, our mental and emotional immune system, giving it the nutrients of loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom, and not the disease of anger, hatred, and resentment. Be careful what we put in our hearts and minds. Let's have a stronger immune system so we can be a real difference in the world. Best we can. All right, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we've cultivated from our time here together. So inspiring to have you all here and really grappling with how to be helpful. Thank you. And let us dedicate all this merit that we have cultivated for the benefit of all beings. May they be free of suffering. May they, whatever we glean from our time together, may we bring it into the world in ways that are truly meaningful. And may we also dedicate our merit for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may cultivate the qualities of freedom, of awakening, of loving kindness and compassion, so we can experience ultimate freedom and be able to be of greatest benefit to all. Let us dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Such a rich, important discussion, and I so deeply appreciate to all of you. Thanks for all the good you bring to us.